The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this podcast are those of the individual and not of any affiliated companies. Occasional adult language is used.
Welcome to the ShamTalk podcast, the #1 Notre Dame athletics podcast in the world. Today, the guys discuss the new rumor about a 2025 Army Shamrock series in New York. They also welcome special guest Braden Lenzy. And now, from Duncan Student Center, here's your host, Jacob Irons.
And we welcome you to ShamTalk episode 2. We made it here. Yes, we did not fold just yet. Myself and JJ Post are here breaking down all the biggest and brightest news in Notre Dame athletics. JJ, how you doing on this summer day, good sir?
Not too bad. I'm recording from my car right now, which is not an ideal location per se, but the soundproofing is excellent, so I've got that going for me.
I'm up in Cape Cod. I'm in my living room / bedroom here. So let's get right to it, though, as brings on a new scouting director. How does this move into that next echelon of college football recruiting to get maybe a couple more in there?
Yeah, by all accounts, I think it's a strong hire. He's a hire that's well regarded in the coaching world, which is something that I think matters, a little bit, because at the end of the day, we are just media. We have no experience in the industry. And, regardless of what anyone in the media says about him, it's all been positive for what it's worth. I'm just saying, we're not people that have perspective on what coaches want to see in other coaches. And the other coaches seem to really like this guy. So that's positive. He's got an NFL background, which I think really helps for Notre Dame's, goal of trying to pitch kids that, we want to send kids to the next level. We can send kids to the next level. And having a guy who has, cut his teeth in the NFL ranks is a big boost in that front. And, overall, he's just got a strong resume. And I think for Notre Dame, a program where, a lot of the pride has been the ability to find diamonds in the rough. If Notre Dame's not going to get the 5 stars in the world, you want to get those players as well. But if you're not going to get them, you're going to need to find the best 3 stars out there. Having a good scouting department is what you need to find the best 3 stars out there.
On that note, this change might be coming. You look at a change in Scott Canyon moving away from Notre Dame as his recruitment place. So, JJ, what does that move mean for Notre Dame football?
Yeah, I think there's 2 different lenses you got to take on the Isaiah Cannon and the Justin Scott news. For Scott, there's no way around it. This is a recruiting battle that Notre Dame needs to win if they, want to compete with the big boys. A 5-star defensive tackle who have offers from Georgia in a Catholic high school in Chicago. That is, for Notre Dame, about as close to a blueprint recruitment as you're going to find for a 5-star you can win. And Notre Dame lost it to Ohio State, a Midwestern team. So that's, something like, again, I don't know what it's going to take if that's going to mean, you need to find a new defensive line coach, though Al Washington, generally speaking, has gotten strong reviews for his recruiting prowess. Does that mean you need to, look at how you pitch these recruits? Does it mean you have to look at how you, do your NIL? I don't know what the details of that recruitment were. And, because we're fans who aren't really involved in this stuff behind the scenes, we won't know what the details are. But you need to reevaluate what happened there because, again, a 5-star from a Catholic high school in Chicago is not the type of recruit Notre Dame can afford to lose if they want to recruit on the upper levels. Canyon, on the other hand, I think is a bit more, write it off. Canyon wanted to be closer to home. He said as much and then committed to Georgia Tech, a school in his home state. I think that's pretty cut and dry. He wanted to stay close to his family, and he went to a school that is closer to his family. So I think that's something Notre Dame probably couldn't have done anything about. And I think that's one of those moves where Notre Dame would have loved to have him in the class, but I think it works out better for all parties. Canyon wanted to stay closer to home. He's going to do exactly that. It's not like he, lied to Notre Dame and ended up going somewhere far away. He said what his reason was. He got out, several months before the class was set to close, and then he went to a school that Notre Dame presumably is not going to be in direct competition with. So I don't see any reason to, really get up in arms or upset about this. It feels like the right move for Canyon, who wanted to stay closer to his family, and it feels like he gave Notre Dame plenty of opportunity now to try to find a replacement should they want one in their class. There's plenty of time left in the cycle to go out and either scout players that are going to come on strong in their senior year, or maybe revisit a couple recruits that you already talked to but opted not to take.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about that. It's a very interesting world as college football world spins around, but now we have a man that was in it for a very long time, the Golden Dome. We're talking to Braden Lenzy on the other side.
You're listening to the ShamTalk podcast, the #1 Notre Dame athletics podcast in the world. We appreciate your support, and we're constantly looking for ways to improve the listener experience. In order to do that, we need your help. We have a pretty cool relationship with Amazon.com, and we'd like to invite you to join us. Amazon recently sent us a special link. When you use this link to buy something from Amazon, we receive a small percentage of the order. Best of all, it costs nothing extra for you. The link is available on the screen and in the description below. Once again, before you head to Amazon, start with our link. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and it helps us provide you with the best possible listener experience. Thanks for your support, and let's send it back to the guys.
And we welcome you back to the Sham Talk podcast along with JJ Post. I'm Jacob Ironton. We are joined by a very special guest, the man, the legend, Braden Lenzy, stepping on to the podcast today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk to a couple Notre Damers.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
So let's start. You've moved on from football. What has life been like from the university so far?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is just adapting to change. You kind of get stuck in a routine as a student athlete, probably from like your junior year of high school on throughout college. Just get very used to, football or whatever your sport may be, being like the main priority of your life. Obviously, school is very important and, you wanted to get a good education, but a lot of the time, especially in my case, I went to Notre Dame, obviously for school, but you want to play football. You don't want to just kind of stick around and just kind of be another number on the field. So there's definitely a lot of time commitment towards football. And then I guess now being an adult, working, it's definitely a very interesting dynamic because you're not really working two jobs, just working one. So I guess just a little bit of figuring out what it is that I like to do with my free time, essentially, because there's a lot more free time and definitely been different, but a lot of fun. And I feel like I'm experiencing a lot of new things.
And on that, any new free time activities, any hobbies you've picked up so far now that you have this ample amount?
I'd say the biggest thing is I've been trying to eat a lot of different foods. So I guess you could maybe say foodie, and that might just be because I'm in San Francisco. But just trying to knock off as much Asian food specifically, and then trying to find the best sandwich I can out in SF. So that's been a lot of fun. And then obviously, one of my two favorite things like anime and manga. So just kind of extending out of more of the mainstream, trying to figure out more, I guess you could say, niche shows or whatever. But it's been a lot of fun.
Going to your time with the Notre Dame program, you were with the Irish for a while, and part of that was you caught passes from 4 different quarterbacks, I believe. What was it like trying to build chemistry with each one of those guys? Was it different with each quarterback? Was it just kind of repeating the process every time you had a new starter?
Yeah, I guess it was different for each one. First 3 years with Ian, really. Wimbush a little bit, but I wasn't really playing when he was playing. And that was a bit different dynamic because Ian was, the vet. He was older, really established, and I was just kind of starting my career. So that relationship was very much so just gaining the respect from him to, trust me with the ball the way he did, some of the vets. And then I guess after that was Jack. And that was a bit more on even terms. It felt like we both came from a similar place where we had something to prove. Him coming from Wisconsin, and me just kind of having a injury-ridden early career. So I think we both kind of share the same passion towards the game at that point in my career and his career. And then in regards to Drew is a bit more, since we were similar in age, we were a bit more in similar friend groups. So kind of where we established our chemistry probably would have dated back to like a summer trip before fall camp. Went to Martha's Vineyard together and just got to spend a lot of time. So there wasn't necessarily as much of a football aspect. We just kind of had that genuine respect for each other because we were already really good friends off the field. And I could say very similar with Tyler. Although he was younger, we kind of ran in similar circles. So I just think, the back end of my career was definitely just, I kind of already gained respect in the locker room. So it was now more just, creating relationships with them as, human beings, not football players.
And you speak to it there a little bit along the lines of when you're a 5th-year player playing with 18-year-olds, that's a very different dynamic. So what was it like to be that senior mentor and leader when you're talking to guys that were just finished playing high school football?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to put it would be when I was a freshman and sophomore, we kind of had, a great leader, and we did have a great leader in Chris Fink. And I really looked up to him. Definitely someone who I would have ran through a brick wall for. Very similar to like a coach. He just had a lot of knowledge, and he just knew how to speak to you depending on who you were as a person. So I think just as a veteran, learning, how you can push, 18, 19-year-olds in certain ways. You can say certain things to, one kid, and other times you might have to hold your tongue and approach it a different situation. Very similar to how the business world is. You just kind of have to understand the team under you. It wasn't even necessarily that I had that type of leverage over them in that sense, but just, getting to know them because, they are young and I was in that place before. So just understanding, what was needed for the team, but also understanding what they needed as an individual.
Okay, so now that you're kind of in your first season as a spectator, someone who's not on the team anymore, do you have any things you're looking out for? Both you kind of talked about in the locker room, guys that are leaders, anyone that you expect to kind of take on a role in that front, and then also just on the field, what are you expecting in your first season as kind of someone who's kind of watching from San Francisco instead of South Bend?
Yeah, I'd say the one person who's really stuck out to me, just from my time being there and kind of seeing him grow was Jaden Thomas. I'd say probably that bowl prep his freshman year and then coming into the Fiesta Bowl and kind of making his mark, and then stepping up the way he did this past year in a huge way, just in terms of, accountability and respect within the building. I think it's, as much as anyone could really ask for at this point. I think the way the game of football is moving, being able to do many things and to essentially not get taken off the field is a huge skill set. And essentially he's, with his type of body, considering he's larger, but then he has the feet and the quickness and skills a receiver needs, but he has the pure just build and strength to be able to like put his head down and block. You can kind of run 12 personnel with 11 personnel the whole time because he's a willing blocker and he actually has the bulk behind it. So just purely from a football aspect, he has everything you would need to even be successful at the next level, stats aside. And then just as an individual, I've just seen him work hard and get better each year. So I believe a big year is to come. And he's definitely one of those dudes who, while he could rack up ridiculous stats, which I do think will be the case, I wouldn't be shocked if he, puts up 800 and is able to leave after this past year, just because he is a very willing run blocker. And not only that, he's on multiple special teams. So just when you look at, a 3-and-out type of guy, you want a leader, you want someone who's willing to do special teams, and you want someone who can essentially not come off the field. And that's kind of what the NFL looks for. So whether it be this year or next, I think we'll see him on Sundays.
Awesome. And then a question along, you're able to play in Notre Dame Stadium a bunch. How does Notre Dame Stadium feel to you? Does it have that big game atmosphere every Saturday when you're playing? What was that adrenaline rush like? And does it compare when you went off and played some other big games in other places?
Tricky. I'd say there's two very distinct vibes of Notre Dame Stadium. And without offense to Notre Dame, I'll just be point blank. I'd say like 80% of the games, very fun, very loud. But it's loud kind of when we're doing very well. We definitely have very critical fans at times. So obviously it's up to the players to win ball games, but I can't think of too many large programs that when the team's struggling, the fans kind of get quiet. I was more accustomed growing up thinking that when a team wasn't playing too well, especially at home, the fans would kind of pick you up. But I think this past year, just obviously tough losses with Stanford and Marshall, but a lot of those instances, it would have been, I would say, appreciated if it was a bit louder because, the whole stadium felt dead. And sometimes, when the players are not playing well, you just need a little bit of that energy. And I feel like Notre Dame Stadium, it's a bit opposite where the fans are very reactionary to how the players are playing, which fair to you. Like you expect high level football. We shouldn't have lost to Marshall Stanford, so that's fair. But on the other side of it, when it is that like one or two large home games every year, I would say, those night games, I don't know if there's a better stadium atmosphere. Thinking back on, Michigan my freshman year, USC my sophomore year, Clemson my junior year, a lot of very large games that, really stuck out to me. And in regards to just other stadiums, there's definitely a few that stuck out. I would say Michigan was easily the most overwhelming and loudest. I would say like without a doubt, just from like start to finish. But if there's like a optimum, like the highest level of like intensity, Virginia Tech for sure was pretty intense. I don't know what the design of the field is per se, but like the field itself just felt shaky at times, which was pretty intense. You feel it in your legs damn near, which I don't know if that's fully exaggerating, but like third downs when it's like loud, like you definitely feel the crowd. I couldn't really say that about many other places. But yeah, I would say Notre Dame can compare with the best of the best. When it comes to like those big games where you really need the crowds, Notre Dame always is there. I think it's more so those games that you should be winning, that when you're not winning, that's when it gets awfully quiet. And it kind of feels like golf, like you just hear, subtle claps.
Well, Braden, thank you for your time and insights. We've got one more question off the field stuff. Got any anime recommendations?
Oh, yeah. Like, are you a big anime fan, or is this like just coming in?
I am very rudimentary, so I've just kind of started.
Okay, so that's kind of tricky. I would say if you just started, you probably don't have like a Crunchyroll, so I would use like Netflix. I would go like A Comic Got Kill. It's 24 episodes on Netflix. Pretty good, like action.
There you go, Jade.
24 episodes, no plot armor. It's a good like entryway to anime because it doesn't really fall too much into the tropes. A lot of it's just action, death, and good story. And if you're in for something a bit more like of a mind thriller, you can maybe do Death Note, or if you really want to go gung ho, I guess you could do Attack on Titan, which is probably my top 3 of all time. But that kind of sets the bar high, so I don't want you to watch it, then have every anime be rated on that scale. But if you really like want to walk away from a show, like, whoa, Attack on Titan would be a good choice.
Well, JJ, it seems like you have plenty of watching to do over the next couple weeks. But we thank you, Braden, for taking the time to sit down with us here on the ShamTalk podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you so much, Braden. We always appreciate his time giving it to us. But now, JJ, we've got maybe a little bit of the rumor wheel circling right now as Army and Notre Dame are set to play in the 2024 year. And there is now talk that this will be the Shamrock Series game due to the history. And we know Notre Dame loves themselves a history. It would mark the 100th year anniversary of when Notre Dame played Army at the Polo Grounds. The thought is that this game would take place at Yankee Stadium in New York City to really be a replication for this 100th year anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool game from a history standpoint. Century mark of a game against Army, and at Yankee Stadium, obviously, the parallel to the Polo Grounds is there. I'm not sure what this really does for Notre Dame. It's a cool game for the historians out there. It's probably a fun, little bone to throw to the Notre Dame Alumni Network of the Northeast and the Subway Alumni Network of the Northeast. But, again, I'm just not really sure, this is a, needle changing event or a needle moving event, I should say, for Notre Dame. It's cool, no doubt about it. And Army's a team that, I don't believe should be slept on. They had a pretty nice season last year, but I don't think it's the type of team that's really going to be, the game you circle on your calendar for Notre Dame. And I don't think it's going to be the game that anyone who's not at Notre Dame is going to circle on the calendar as much watch. So, I think it'll be fun. I think it's there's always some level of benefit as much as there is drawbacks to testing yourselves against the triple option. It'll be interesting for me to see where they place that game on the schedule, given, we've seen how different Notre Dame has approached Navy depending on where Navy is on the calendar, and what this does to the 2024 schedule. So I'm not mistaken, Notre Dame has a pretty robust set of 2024 opponents as is. I'm not sure if that would mean one of those games gets moved, if that means, one of those games is not actually happening. But if I'm not mistaken, there was a pretty solid list of 2024 teams on Notre Dame's schedule as is, and Army wasn't factored into that. So I don't know if that means that would be reshuffled or what the deal is, but, it'd be a cool history-making game, and I'd be interested to see where they put it on the schedule in terms of who they play before and after. But other than that, I'm not sure it's exactly a needle mover in terms of Notre Dame's strength of schedule in 2024, not to take anything away from Army, who, like I said, is a program that's made some nice strides in the last few years.
I agree. I think that this is a really good game, and I think Notre Dame does something very differently. We hold up our end of the bargain with playing Navy every year due to their commitment to Notre Dame, even when we were in the darkest times. I like this. I like the history to it. I think Notre Dame fans understand the history. This would be a great storyline going into a game without even a question. The teasers and everything around it would be great from a viewer's perspective. I really like it. I think it's going to be a good one. I think Army is on the way up, and they're a really solid program. So I'm excited to see if that one gets in and turns into Yankee Stadium. But that's going to do it for this episode of the ShamTalk podcast. For JJ Post, I'm Jacob Irons saying so long. We'll talk to you later.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. To stay up to date with ShamTalk and get all our behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Notre Dame Television. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and go Irish!